but I think it's fair to say that this film's going to take his work to brand new audiences. It's adapted from the existential noir novel by James Sallis, which I just happen to have in my hand here, and it's screened at Cannes and won Nicolas the Best Director prize. I very often get excited about the films that we show here. I shouldn't say that because I choose them all. But I've actually put a tie on tonight because I'm so excited about this. It's hands down my favourite film of the year so far. I think anybody here that has enjoyed films such as Point Blank, Bullet, setting the bar very high, I know, more recently perhaps Steven Soderbergh's The Limey, you're going to be in for a treat. I'm delighted to say that fresh from his Sex Pistols inspired performance on British breakfast television this morning, Nicolas is here to introduce the film to us, and he'll be joining us for a Q&A afterwards, so please welcome Nicolas Winding Refn.
Thank you very much. Well, yes, the BBC was a bit odd. Also because that woman right before came up and said to me, "You can't swear." Fuck. And then that guy from that band, what was his name? Happy Monday. Yeah, he was so polite. He was like talking about his gardening. I was like, fuck that. So when I came on, I was just like, okay. Well, anyway, well, thank you very much for coming out and seeing the film. It's probably better to talk about it when you have seen it, and I'll, of course, answer all your questions. I will probably say that it has 5 things which I think is quite essential when you want to watch a movie. It has violence, it has romance, it has Ryan Gosling and, and Carey Mulligan, and it's only 90 minutes. So I'll see you afterwards. Thank you. You know, essentially Drive is a movie about a man who transforms himself into what he was always meant to be, which was a superhero. And through the course of that, he realizes that in order to be a superhero, he must cut himself off from a normal life. And because in the beginning of the movie, he's 2 people. He's one person by night, he's one person by day. And those 2 don't mix. It's like a switch. Just like the structure of the film has no really second act. The first half, and then there's this third half. It's like when he meets Irene, and then there's when he doesn't have Irene. And basically, the movie is about how he marries the 2 worlds into his behavior and becomes a superhero. And of course, I have a song that really hammers it in case people miss the point, by saying he's a real human being and a real hero.
You've got a good thing going on with masks as well, when there's the motif of the mask that the driver wears, and also the Halloween mask that the young boy wears.
But that's I shoot in chronologically order, you know, so I can see the movie kind of fold out in front of me, and it's great for the actors to kind of, in terms of their characters, to build it up. And that mask in the beginning with the boy was actually a way to get him off camera. So it was like, hey kid, put on this mask, you know, because else he would be. It was his first day at work, the child, and the way that I work with children, and I don't really like to because I think it's very unfair to put them through the process even, is to leave them alone. It means that the other actors really have to deal with him. And of course this kid, he doesn't want to be, he wants to go and play with his friends, but his mom is pimping him out. And she was a fucking piece of work, I'm telling you. 2 for 1, you know. But a way to keep him in the scene, but keep him concentrated in another way, was this mask. And of course later on, when he puts on the same mask, we're like, oh wow, that's pretty interesting, I never thought of that. And then suddenly it becomes a whole theme through the movie. And that's when you get in chronological order, the film really progresses ahead of you. And you know, because the shooting script was 81 pages, and I maybe shot 60% of it, and so forth, so it kept on rewriting and changing along the way.
I also want to talk about the depiction of Los Angeles. You know, I always think that these films are kind of interesting, these films shot in LA and other parts of America, when they have an outsider's view. You know, you think of Wim Wenders in Paris, Texas. You think of John Boorman in Point Blank, which I might reference again later. You know, was you kind of keen to capture a different? I mean, I know you have some of the great neon, the aerial shots at night of the city, but you also show a different side. I mean, I know we've all seen that the galleyways with the water with people drunk, but you know, the sequence where they have this very kind of bucolic moment where they go out to the lakes and the sequence even where Cook meets and describes the job. You kind of try and show a different side to Los Angeles. I think was that a very conscious decision?
No, because I don't. First, when you don't drive a car in LA, you're pretty fucked. It's like being in prison, and Second, I didn't really know LA at all, and I had Ryan chauffeur me around a lot, either him or Carrie, to show me Los Angeles, especially Ryan, who knew LA extremely well and has been living there for so many years. He would just show me Los Angeles and show me Los Angeles. And I just found the places that I liked to shoot, not knowing what they really were or what they were famous or not famous for. But what I realized that if you go past Sunset Boulevard, which has its own charm, LA is actually quite an incredible city. And it's like a maze. It's like never ending. And yet there's something surreal about it because it's fake. It's like an illusion. It's like you're waiting for the sets to be torn down around you. So that meant that I just went out and I shot it the way I would like to see Los Angeles, not knowing the city at all. It's like if you go to London that I don't really know and I want to shoot it the way I like to see it, I don't understand it. So when people ask me, what was your agenda? I didn't have an agenda. I just felt what it looked good and then took it from there. And then just financially, of course, I had to restrict myself to certain areas because I always wanted to shoot in chronological order, which of course the Americans didn't understand. They didn't understand the word. And I had to explain to them that meant we shoot scene 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They're like, oh, wow. That's a funny European way of making movies. But for me, it's always a great way to see the film progress, and then I can change it, or I can see things in it that I didn't realize when I started working on it. And so if any changes into the editing, and we were cutting the movie at my house, and it came on evolving into this kind of state. And Ryan and me were, we're very telekinetic in our behavior. We can read each other's minds, which was a very easy to do relationship we had. It was almost like we became two people. It's like, no, it's not erotic, but we became two people with one mind.
Because I know we spoke about the Ryan thing, and it's kind of the elephant in the room. I think, it's the thing that we're dancing around talking about a little bit. How did you originally... The Point Blank reference was kind of a MacGuffin, because there are similarities, because also Point Blank was a film that Lee Marvin kind of petitioned John Borman to make, and I know there's a similar aspect with Drive and Ryan wanting you on board. How did that kind of relationship come about? And I mean, obviously he had a huge respect and admiration for your films. How did that how did the call come?
Well, I was in Los Angeles. I'd gone to LA after I'd done a movie called Valhalla Rising where nobody spoke. I feel maybe my next challenge should be doing a movie in Los Angeles to see how it would turn out. And I had gotten a script by Paul Schrader called The Dying of the Light, about a CIA agent who goes on an existentialistic journey and dies at the end. And I got Harrison Ford to play the lead. And I thought, if I can kill Harrison Ford in a movie, it's a win-win. And I was, like, wow, Hollywood actually does work, and the Dream Machine does work, because it came together quite fast. So I was like, starting to be a bit arrogant about everything, because, man, why are you complaining? It's so easy over here. Well, boy, did I learn, because at one point Harrison Ford decided not to die. You gotta be fucking kidding me, right? And it's like, what? And there's no point in making the movie, and then he tries to say, well, there really is, and blah, 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 back and forth. And you're sitting at Harrison's private hangar, which is great. He's a wonderful man. And he's trying to persuade you not to kill him. And you know that, well, this is not going to go well. And it started to unravel, and I was like, oh, well, there you go. Should have been too cocky about my situation in LA. And then I got a call from Ryan Gosling, out of the blue, we'd never met, asking if I would meet him for dinner and talk about maybe doing a movie together. Which was, great. Hollywood is all about meeting. Basically, Hollywood is all about talent meeting, realizing if they want to do something together, especially a director and actor, because that's how films get financed in America. If you have the director and you have the star, that's basically the closest you get to a greenlit movie. So that's all about those meetings. Everything you do in Hollywood, just take meetings in that process. So I was like, yeah, sure, might as well. I'm here. And the only problem was that I was very ill. I had gotten a high fever coming into the airplane, and that was pretty bad. So Harrison, the nice guy he is, got out and got me these anti-flu drugs, which they have in America. It's this powder you pour in boiling water and you drink it, which took the fever down. The only problem also made me high as a kite. And I would speak as slowly as Harrison Ford for a couple of days. And what was weird was that then they sent over a script in the morning that Universal had developed that was Drive, that Ryan had kind of been interested in maybe pursuing. I read the script, couldn't remember a single word. And then I finally got out of bed, and I took some more drugs, and I went to the restaurant, and I barely got out of the cab, it was half an hour late, and I got into the restaurant, and Ryan was already sitting there, and he was really cool and proper, and very attractive, has a great aura, he's like, this is the movie star of movie stars. And then here I come, and I'm like so confused. I'm like, oh, all right, sit down. Thank you. And I sit myself, so I am basically in profile to him. You sitting where you are, trying to have a conversation. I couldn't move. I was sitting like that, which is kind of arrogant in a way. And I didn't mean to be. It was just like I could not move my body, and it was so high. And I don't do drugs anymore, so if you haven't done drugs in a long time, when you get high, you get really high. And so the conversation started, and a little bit about this, a little bit about that. He asked a lot about my films. He's a very smart man, very curious man, and really very interested in how you do things. And we talked a little bit about music, and about an hour and a half. Kind of wind down, and I was so out of it by then. I said, "Can you please take me home?" Which was kind of strange because, yeah, okay, you don't drive? No, I don't drive. Okay, and I was too cheap to pay for a cab because I thought this was probably going to go nowhere. At least I was not going to get $40 out. So he goes, "Yeah, sure, okay, I'll give you a ride." And we walked out of the restaurant. We got into his car, and. You never been on a blind date that's gone wrong? It's like just waiting to get rid of each other. There's going to be no action whatsoever. So we get into the car, we're driving Santa Monica, and we're sitting in silence. And Ronnie's really cool. He's a great driver. He really enjoys it. I can sense. I haven't looked at him all night, and the silence is just unbearable. And I'm so fucking out of it. And he turns on the radio, and it's soft rock. Oh boy. And I'm like the woman, I'm all emotional, I'm a very feminine man, So I like girl things, I have daughters only, and I don't really like guys and stuff like that.
He's not taking drugs at the moment. That flew again.
Stopped that many years ago. Anyway. Our Speedwagons, I can't fight this feeling anymore. I didn't even know this song. It was like a classic American pop song of the 80s, like a rock ballad. And I'm from the 80s, and I love rock ballads. So I turned it up really loud, because when you're sober, you do really stupid things. Like your hearing goes down, or you just get all messed up. So it's really loud. And we're sitting, and I can't fight this feeling. There's blares out of the ceiling, and we're driving across Santa Monica, which is a long trip. And I start singing to the song. And I'm starting, really, I can't sing, I'm really getting into it. And I'm singing these lyrics, and Ryan's just like completely still. Because, he thought we would be talking a possible script, maybe doing something together, really cool. No. Now, I'm getting into the song, I'm building myself up to the solo, and I start to cry. The tears start going down my cheek. And a lot of it had to do with, I'm sure, that I was missing my wife and my kids, and Harrison Ford wouldn't die. Everything was just so fucked up in my life right now. Here I thought I was like the man of the year, and I was like just another European burned out talent. But when you cry, I cry a lot. And when you cry, you have like a relief. It's like, you got it out of your system. Well, after I kind of got it out of my system, I suddenly got an idea for a movie. And I suddenly lit up. And I turned to Ryan for the first time. The music was still blaring out of him. And I think it was like, oh my, he's going to kiss me now or something. And I screamed in his face. I said, I got it. We're going to make a movie about a man who drives around in a car at night listening to pop music because that's his emotion relief. And Ryan looked at me and said, I'm in. And that's how the relationship began between us. And then when I wasn't stoned, I went back and I looked at the material, of course. That had been a big Universal $60 million project with Hugh Jackman originally set to do, that then they decided not to do, and the project has been collecting dust for many years. I love Haas's writing, he's a wonderful writer, so I went and sat down with him and then tore out a lot of pages, and then I went back and read the book, and then I really brought the book back into the script, and then nobody wanted to finance it. And then we were able to get independent money, and then off we went and made it.
Let's talk about the violence. I mean, I know that's the thing that got you into hot water this morning on the British. Has anybody seen the clip of Nicolas on breakfast television this morning? It's destined to become a YouTube classic. It's very funny. Let's talk a little bit about the violence in the... it's the way they tried you like a child. I mean, they do literally speak to you like you're 6 years old.
Well, it was kind of weird because you come in and Carrie...
You were high, you had flu, and...
I couldn't take honor for that, but I was with Carrie, and with that woman from the show, first I saw that they were talking to this, as I said earlier, this guy from that band who, what was his name?
Sean Ryder.
Sean Ryder. And he was sitting there like an old man talking about his gardening, and I was like, well, that's weird. I guess everybody ends up like that. And then we got on, and then this very nice woman, who I can't remember her name, was saying, well, you're very good at using violence. I mean, it comes out of nowhere. And so that's a valid question. I thought, well, let me explain that. I'd like to explain that in a visual, maybe like a picture way, so you will be better to understand. So, violence is like fucking. And of course, they had a heart attack. But my point is that violence works the same way as sex. It's all about the build-up to the executions. Violence itself has no meaning if there's not an interest in it, and the more emotion you can invest, which is a bottomless emotion, the more something will pay off. And I was just trying to make a point to the depressed British person.
Again, in that regard, sound plays a huge part in this film, because I remember the sequence in the lift, which I think is incredibly poignant and romantic. And I remember that sequence being a lot worse. And it reminds me of when I saw a Maurice Perros, the anniversary film, when you think about the dogfighting. You do see, there is a shot of the head, but it's mainly through the sound. It's the sound of the foot, and the fact that we had the music so loud. You use the sound design in an interesting way, don't you, in that regard?
Well, sound is pure emotions, and that's why there's a lot of silence, because it's a way for you to almost, as an audience and almost as a creator, of almost like stripping everything down to its pure moment of realness. And then you can build it up again, and you can take it out again, you can build it up again. That's why silence is a very interesting, it's almost like the bottom base of anything, is silence. And the elevator scene, which was a scene that actually I came up with much later into shooting because something else wasn't working out as I thought it would be. And then I wanted the sex and violence to kind of, almost the opposites, to meet in the same moment. And that's when he kisses her goodbye, because now he knows what he has to become. And it's like he knows that this is what he was meant to be. It's almost like, yeah, it's a sad moment, but it's also a joyous moment because he can now inflict pain on these people, which is also part of him. That's the difficulties that human superheroes have, is that they're always the moral code of where do they stand in terms of what they have to do. And of course, sound, essentially filmmaking is not about what you see, it's about what you don't see. Because the greatest images is what you create in your own mind. I can do things here, but you will always have a stronger fantasy than I can ever do. So if you can find the balance where sound and images give you a third image, that's when you've accomplished something. And I'm not a particularly good filmmaker. There's a lot of much better filmmakers than me, but I'm very good at the kind of films I make, and it all came out of when I saw the Texas Chainsaw Massacre when I was 14 in New York, because that's when I realized film was an art form, because I saw another movie that wasn't there. And I saw the power of what you can do with image and sound and storytelling that goes against all conventions.
Okay, I'd happily sit and ask questions all night, but we've got about 10 minutes left, and we are on so we have to finish after 10 minutes, so let's give people in the audience a chance to ask a question. I think we've got roving microphones, and there's a gentleman with the same hairstyle as me.
You're my inspiration. Good evening. First and foremost, I thought the film was brilliant. I really enjoyed it. Well done. Can I just ask, in regards to the visual content and obviously the sound content, was Michael Mann an influence in any way? Because I know there's been some comparisons between this film and say something like Heat, but when I was watching it, I kept thinking of Manhunter. There's this constant sense of danger and the tension that was constantly throughout the film. I was wondering if that was any reference.
Well, actually, Manhunter is my favorite Michael Mann movie. So, and what's interesting about Michael Mann is that he is probably the only real director that has used L.A. as importantly in his films, as for example Woody Allen and Martin Scorsese, and some of the other New York filmmakers have used New York. And it's strange that so few filmmakers have not used L.A. more interesting, because it is an incredible, incredible place to shoot.
Okay, the gentleman in the same, one row forward. Yeah, there's a mic coming from your.
Hi, by the way. Your use of slow-mo, was it simply to create that kind of dreamlike world, or was there more to it? And to a small second point, was there any kind of Marlon Brando-ish kind of influence with your, I don't know, making up of Ryan Gosling? Like, for example, he always has like a lot of blood on him. They kind of getting beaten up a lot, and other things, that kind of thing. So
that kind of thing. All right. Well, what was the first question? I'm sorry. All right. Well, I never really used slow-mo a lot until I started using it in Bronson, and then I decided to shoot a whole movie in slow motion, which was Valhalla Rising, which did not work as well. So I sped it up and made it more even. I thought it was kind of cool, but then I realized the film just got really long. But it was a great idea. And then with, of course, this. But I love the language of slow motion if it's used correctly, because it heightens reality in a sense. And if it's used correctly, it can heighten emotions, quadruple it if it's done. It can also be dangerous because it can also be tedious and predictable and obvious and not have it can have the exact opposite effect. So it's a gimmick that's very hard to work with. But if it's done correctly, I'm very fascinated by it. And of course, very few directors have been used it. Of course, you have Sam Peckinpah, who's the king of slow motion, but John Woo would also use it a lot in his Oriental films and so forth. It's actually, a lot of time, very much an action-oriented gimmick. But you can use it for so many different other things. Martin Scorsese has always used it a lot and so forth. And, Terry, which is the famous Marlon Brando role from On the Waterfront, and Travis Bickle are the two most iconic male kind of performances in terms of what generations were aspiring to at that moment. And I think that Ryan Gosling is the greatest living American actor, even though he's from Canada. And he has the caliber and the charisma that those two actors had when they were young. But he's also so fierce and has no fear that he's willing to take those kind of chances that they did. And then he is reminiscent of their just power on screen. Truman Capote said about Marlon Brando that he had the body of an animal and the face of a poet. And I think that's also very precise with De Niro and Ryan Gosling.
I think the rest of the cast is very good as well. Bryan Cranston and Ron Perlman and Albert Brooks, I think, are also fantastic. Just how many people here have seen Valhalla Rising? And okay, people that do want to check out Nicolas's other films, they're all released in this country through Metrodome. So if you go to the Metrodome website, you can find Pusher, Bleeder, Valhalla Rising, and Bronson as well. So that's worth doing. Okay, we've got time. Okay, there's lots of hands. We do the person in the red. Could you stand out? Okay.
Thank you. Having not read the book, I was wondering if the jacket was in there already, or whether it was something you stylistically added afterwards.
No, the jacket did not exist in the book. The jacket came out of Kiss, I Was Made for Loving You. And because I love the idea of this glam, this kind of yet very aggressive, but also very flamboyant sound. And I came with the idea of I said, Ryan, the driver is going to be wearing a white satin jacket. like in the 80s, that would illuminate a night like a night, because essentially all the characters are archetypes, you know, and out of Grimm's fairy tales design. And he was like, oh, cool, great, you know, and being great actor that he is, when you deal with people like that, you let them basically pick up a lot of their own clothes, because it's a way for them to define the DNA of their characters. And it's very important you also give actors the space to create their own lives as the characters that they're performing. So, and clothes is one of the main things that an actor is a personal way for them to build up in a way. And so Ryan would go out and he would find a type of jacket that he would feel comfortable in, or a jacket that he felt worked for him. And he came back with a few options, and because we're telekinetic, we of course found the one immediately that we both liked. And you know, those were like military jackets or something of the past, and they had these animal symbols on it, like these American eagles or a snake or some silly stuff from the Midwest. And I remember thinking, oh, that's a really cool thing. It's like almost he has his mark on him. And so we started having the jacket custom made into this satin design with this white satin. And one day I was out with the costume designer in the mechanic shops where Ryan was working on his own car. He was building his own car to understand the surgery of a motor. It's very impressive. So the car he's driving around in, he built himself. I showed his Scorpio Rising, which is a very famous Kenneth Anger short, because I was trying to visualize what the fetish of the mechanic shops in terms of how people dress and things like that. And it starts with a scorpion. And of course, Ryan and I, being telekinetic, immediately said to each other, non-verbally, it's a scorpion. And that became the symbol of the driver. And then of course, by enhancing it so big, it became his logo. And of course, that cemented still the fact that by night it was almost like he had his own costume that was not fully created yet. But through the movie, it becomes more and more apparent that that's why he wears it.
Okay, I'm being told we've got 3 minutes, so this is not going to end well because people are going to be annoyed. Let's have a question. Okay, we're going to have a question from a woman who's... Yep. It's very dark. I think it's... Yes, it is. I'm sorry, just kidding. No, it is very dark. I wasn't trying to be... You can't...
You said when you walked in that violence and romance, and the third thing that sells movies. Why do you think violence sells movies?
Well, because art is an act of violence.
That gives us time for one more question. Okay, I feel bad, but there's a gentleman here that has been very, very keen, so I think we'll have to go to him. We do need to get a show in after this, so I know people are probably going to want to speak to Nicolas, but if we can just let him get out of the auditorium so we can start the next show, that would be great. Okay, fire away.
Hi, Nicolas. I saw in the credits that you mentioned you thanked Alejandro Jodorowsky, and I wonder if he was an influence or did he have any involvement in the film at all?
Well, Alejandro and I are very close. I don't know if people know who he is. He created a movie called El Topo, a film called Holy Mountain, and so forth. And he's probably one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. And I believe you even showed his movies here recently. And I became very close to him in a very strange meeting between us in Paris, and there was no crying, there was no drugs involved, but he christened me his spiritual son. And I remember thinking that when I went off to Los Angeles, I called him and said, what advice will you give me? And he said, well, you know, whenever they talk to you in Hollywood, just nod and smile a lot. Don't say a single word, just nod and smile. And I did that, and it worked.
Okay, Drive is released Friday, September 23rd by Icon, who we thank very much for this preview. Thank you to all the Curzon staff. Do recommend the film to your friends. It opens here. Biggest thanks to the very emotional, feminine, non-drug-taking Nicolas Winding Refn.